I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up.
And that was a recording made by President Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, and authenticated by NBC News. Cohen discussed setting up a company to pay a tabloid to bury a story about an alleged affair between Trump and a Playboy model. And within that, there is a potential problem for President Trump. That's because Mr. Trump's longtime money man is cooperating with federal prosecutors. We're talking about Alan Weisselberg. You may have heard of him. He's the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization and will soon testify before a grand jury. Prosecutors in New York's Southern District consider him a witness in the Cohen investigation. Weisselberg has been described as, quote, the most senior person in the organization that isn't Trump himself, and he has a long history with the president's businesses. Weisselberg worked as an accountant for the president's father, Fred Trump, for years. By the 1980s, he was the Trump family company's financial controller, reporting to the then CFO. Weisselberg became more involved in the Trump business when Donald Trump bought the Miss Universe pageant in 1996, tapping Weisselberg to serve on the board. In 2000, he was named vice president of Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts in Atlantic City after an accounting scandal brought scrutiny by the Securities Exchange Commission. That business eventually declared bankruptcy in 2004. He served as the treasurer for the Trump Foundation. The now defunct nonprofit is the subject of an investigation by the New York State Attorney General over a $25,000 donation to a political action committee. And in 2016, it was Weisselberg who, according to the Wall Street Journal, arranged to pay Cohen. He then used the money to pay Stormy Daniels $130,000 just before the election to keep news of an alleged affair quiet, which Mr. Trump denies. Just as important, he prepared the president's elusive tax returns for years. His knowledge of the Trump Organization and the president's finances dwarf Cohen's, making Weisselberg a potential danger to the president. Washington Post senior political reporter Aaron Blake joins me live. You have been tracking all of the twists and turns with Weisselberg, Aaron. So in your piece, you say dominoes have yet to fall, and among those dominoes is one potentially huge one. Alan Weisselberg. Why is he such a big domino?
Well, he's been maybe the most mysterious figure in this over the last several months. We learned several months ago that he had reached some kind of an immunity agreement with prosecutors who were probing the Cohen situation. Of course, as you laid out, his history with President Trump would make that potential cooperation potentially very significant, especially if there are really things that have happened at the Trump Organization that are big. But we don't know much about Alan Weisselberg and what he's been talking about because he's been out of the news pretty much ever since then. I think what we saw this week, and specifically at the tail end of that Michael Cohen press release from SDNY, where they disclosed that American Media Incorporated, the parent company of the National Enquirer, had basically corroborated the fact that these were campaign finance violations, that they were aimed at the campaign. The question is, who else is corroborating those stories that the prosecutors have now concluded that these were in fact campaign finance violations? Alan Weisselberg is somebody who has been implicated in this occasionally. He was implicated in that tape that you played earlier. According to reports, Michael Cohen has been telling investigators that he was aware of these payments in real time and helped organize them. It sounds by all accounts as if he is somebody that Michael Cohen would have been consulting on these payments from the very beginning. And so the question is, has he been implicated by investigators? Has that given them leverage over him in order to use that immunity to get him to actually talk about certain things? And then, of course, the big one, which is what all does he know? What other illegalities could be involved with the Trump Organization? And he would be in a position to talk about all of those things.
You and I have talked about the fact that, and you've been reporting on this, the initial plea agreement was quite narrow.
Yes.
Could that change?
Well, it could change feasibly if the seriousness of the campaign finance violations has been established. You know, before we knew that there was hush money paid and that it was right before the election, and so we all suspected these were campaign finance violations. But then you had Cohen come around and flip on the president. You then have American Media Incorporated now verifying that account. So if the prosecutors do have this new evidence that this was in fact a violation of the law, and that Alan Weisselberg was involved in that, perhaps their agreement, their cooperation could evolve as time goes on. Perhaps he could have more of an incentive to talk about certain things, recognizing his own potential legal jeopardy.
And if you could look into your crystal ball a little bit, are you expecting more people to flip? What are you going to be watching for next?
I think it's probably a foregone conclusion. I mean, we kind of seen it's just a steady progression of people. I do think with Alan Weisselberg, there is a real question, as you and I were talking about whether he is somebody who is just simply too loyal to the Trump family to really give the prosecutors something significant. This is somebody who has been around since Fred Trump was around with the Trump Organization. This is somebody who is very close to the Trump family, whereas somebody like Michael Cohen kind of came along in more recent years, maybe used his connections to Trump to help himself in some ways. The idea that Weisselberg would be the guy who took down the Trumps after all these years, I think is very difficult to believe, but he is the person who might be in a position to do it.
It's just remarkable. Aaron Blake, your reporting has been tremendous on this.
Thank
we
you very
continue
much.
to track your reporting as we continue to understand what happened with this.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.